welcome to a new video. I will do something different this time. I want to make a showcase of a bunch of interesting and potentially useful interactions between items, champions, and so on. The focus will primarily be on items, but there will be some interactions that only work with specific champions, for example. With that being said, let's get into it. Z with synchronized souls. It is actually possible for you with Z to recall and then teleport back if you have synchronized soul due to the empowered recall. This is not particularly useful, but I find it very interesting. This is something I found on the internet, it's not something I came up with. Everything else in this video was personally found by me, but this particular thing was found on the internet and I thought it was way too cool not to show it. Unending Despair can trigger Liandry's and other items. It's not just Liandry's, Liandry's is just the most obvious. It actually works with a large variety of items. Pretty much every single item that gets triggered by ability damage gets triggered by unending. Such as Ludens, for example, and Shadow Flame. Oh, sorry, not Shadow Flame, Blackfire. This is not really that useful, but again, I just find it interesting. So, look at this. I don't have unending in my inventory, right? Yet it still procs constantly. It's gonna be more visible if I have the unending proc Liandry's, but as you can see, even though I don't have the item, it still procs. Also, it is possible for you to keep the Liandry's Torment damage amp, if you want, even without Liandry's. As long as you have one source of burn, this is enough to keep it forever. Now, both of the effects that are kinda phantom effects right now, and you don't have the item for, will disappear if you exit combat, so this is not really that useful. Something very interesting with manamune is the fact that it is possible to proc it multiple times on a single attack. Specifically, attacks that are counted as ability damage due to either being something like Camille Q or in this case Bard's passive, trigger it both as an attack and as a damaging ability. So essentially you just get a bunch of free damage. This can be very easily abused to do something like this. This is the average health of an ADC and armor and magic resist. It has a bit less armor and a bit more magic resist, but overall it's pretty close to an ADC. And look how much damage am I doing when I have the chimes. You do need the chimes for Bard to multi-proc it though. There's a huge list of abilities where this happens, I'm probably gonna put it on the screen. Deadman's Plate is a particularly interesting item. For those that don't know, after you move up a bit, it makes your next attack do more damage. But if you don't build full stacks, you still do more damage, just not the maximum amount. This actually makes it do a surprising amount of damage on pretty much any champion that can move between auto attacks a bit. It's a bit better on ranged champions usually, but there are no ranged champions that would actually enjoy Deadman's. However, something like Kayn, for example, could very easily use it. Now for this demonstration I have Warwick because I wanna show the difference compared to something like a BF sword. So as you guys can see, the difference between Deadman's and the BF sword is not that significant. You do pretty much the same damage and the BF sword is worth 1300 gold. Nico's passive gets triggered 3 times by having Runan's Hurricane, which allows you to have the empowered auto on every auto. As you can see, Nico is not doing normal autos at all. Also, Runan's Hurricane has the same kind of interaction with Hullbreaker, where it stacks it way faster than you should. Look over here and you're gonna see what I mean. We have Hullbreaker being constantly stacked. Now we have Imperial Mandrake with Rylai's. In case you guys didn't know, those two items do synergize together. So if you slow somebody with Rylai's, you do trigger Imperial Mandrake. This is relatively useful. I could see this being used on like a brand support maybe, but it's not the biggest thing in the world. Scout's Slingshot actually procs items and stuff. It procs anything that's proc by ability damage, so stuff like Liandry's, for example, does in fact get proc by Scout's Slingshot. Same for Comet. As you can see, I autoed this guy once, and I procced both Liandry's and Comet on him. So, something I find really cool about Slingshot is the fact that you can have Liandry's proc on itself again. You need about a 2-second cooldown when you trigger it for you to do that. So as you can see, this guy is burning and then he gets procced again and keeps burning for a long time. This can theoretically result in an infinite burn, so if you have no cooldown, this guy will never stop burning. Okay, this is a bit harder to demonstrate, but what I'm gonna show now is the fact that Nico's clone triggers items separately from Nico. So even if Nico has items on cooldown, the clone doesn't. I specifically need this particular dragon for this, and I'm using this setup because this is the easiest way for you to see. But Scout Slingshot procs when Bami's Cylinder deals damage, and allows Luden's Companion to trigger. Which, as you can see, Nico's clone triggered Luden's, but I still have Luden's myself, and Scout Slingshot was even on cooldown at that time. This does mean, and we're getting to the reason why I have a Rylai's and an Imperial Mandrake, that Nico is, to my knowledge, the only champion in the game that can proc a Rylai's, that can proc a Mandrake with herself. Because of the clone, if the clone procs Imperial Mandrake on the target, the Nico damaging will count as a different champion. If Nico procs Imperial Mandrake on the target, the clone damaging will count as a different champion. But in either way, I find it very cool that you can proc Imperial Mandrake with yourself. The last interaction I have for you guys today is that between Nico and a bunch of items actually. Specifically Sunfire, Unending and all of this. So, when you're invisible, Sunfire would usually reveal you. But, for Nico in particular, being transformed does not make her get revealed, and Sunfire still procs. So, as you guys can see, by having Sunfire and a mix of Unending with some items for Unending to proc, I can burn this target to death without even touching them. This will be a video in its own in the future, because just look at it. This is amazing, but I just wanted to show this ahead of time because I think it's just really, really cool.